Good afternoon, everyone. Here I am at the Free Thought Project. That's March 7th, 2018. Horrifying video shows deputies punch, kick, taser naked mentally ill man. Now, I tried to access the video and cannot, but this is the man. Now, let's see if it will play now. No, it won't. Okay. Alright, so this happened in Georgia. Let's see. Georgia. Muskogee County, Georgia. And there's a very disturbing and graphic video that was released this week showing a mentally ill man being repeatedly punched, kicked, and tasered by deputies whose only tool appeared to be violence. Now, I know that a lot of white people would say, well, so what? It's just a black guy. Big deal. He was probably breaking the law. Okay. Would, say, disorderly conduct justify not one time of this, not two times, but 2 years worth of this. 2 years. He sat in the county jail and was tortured. And again, it takes a real cowardly fucking person to harm somebody that can't defend themselves. This man clearly could not defend himself. He was naked, handcuffed behind his back, shackled, and so on and so forth. But somehow, their brutality is justified. Now, if these cops can do this to this man, just think what they can do to you. The video was so shocking that even the head of the jail said it was excessive. According to the Ledger, Major T. Culpepper described the use of force as excessive and out of policy under most circumstances. He recommended better training for staff to avoid such situations in the future. How about firing the motherfuckers that repeatedly tortured this man? How about charging them with aggravated assault? Courtney Jackson, 21, was in the midst of a mental breakdown in February of 2016 when he encountered police officers. Jackson had run into traffic and was arrested on charges of disorderly conduct. Instead of receiving the mental help that he needed, Jackson was thrown into a cage where he became suicidal. Clearly lacking the training in dealing with mental ill individuals, deputies attempted to remove Jackson from his cell with tasers, fists, chains, and boots. Although the video does not show Jackson being combative, police claim in their report that the naked 21-year-old was a threat, and the severe beating he received that left him permanently injured was necessary. At this point, several closed fist strikes were delivered to inmate Jackson's head, face, abdomen, and ribs. Deputy Brian Davis wrote, due to his continuous combative and aggressive behavior, C.O. Gillard attempted to drive stun using the controlled electronic weapon. The controlled electronic weapon had no effect on the subject as he attempted to grab the CEW from C.O. Gillard. Now, does anyone believe that that stun weapon had no effect on this dude? Now, multiple officers and another um, controlled electric weapon arrived. They entered the cell, and at that point, the second controlled electronic weapon was deployed. At this time, Davis continued, contact was made, and he eventually let go of me. Once he released his grip, I was then pulled from the cell by other officers as others moved into the cell to restrain him. So he was pulled out of the cell, and the guy, other officers moved to restrain him. I then kicked inmate Johnson on his right side multiple times until he released the CEW. Corporal Robert Denny wrote, Jackson was then brought down to the ground in an attempt to roll him over to be handcuffed. Jackson continued to fight the officers and refused all commands given. Now, does anyone believe that this man was surrounded by a bunch of armed officers and still fighting them? The CEW was deployed and contact was made. Denny continued in his report, I became tangled up in the wires during the fight. I was tased multiple times during the fight, trying to get Jackson to roll over. All officers then attempted to back out of the cell while tasing inmate Jackson under power. I was the last one out attempting to leave the cell. Inmate Jackson jumped up at the end of the 5-second cycle. He came at me and got me in a headlock. Does anyone believe that? I reached for his testicles and squeezed them until he released me. Inmate Jackson was then brought to the ground and shackled. Now, does anyone believe what these cops are saying? If you do, I have some fucking killer land in Alaska. During the melee, Jackson was tasered more than 70 seconds. At the end of the assault, Jackson was left dazed, shackled, and bloody. The beating was so bad that it prompted inmates in the Muskie County Jail to contact Jackson's family in order to let them know how bad he was being treated. Jackson's sister, Chastity Lee, responded by sending a letter to then Sheriff John Dare and other officials expressing concern about how her brother was being treated in jail. No one has seen him since an altercation that happened on Saturday, June 25th, she wrote. A worker at the NAACP has went to the jail to see him with permission from Sheriff Dar, or Dare, however you say it, shit, and he was denied the visit. I'm asking you to please help my brother and stop the attacks that is inflicted on him by jail guards. Lee said the family had spoken to nurses, doctors, and the jail warden about her brother's condition, and they all said Jackson was fine with no physical injuries, according to the ledger. However, as the medical reports show, Jackson was not fine. They beat him so badly that he now has abnormal liver function, and despite all these serious medical conditions, the plaintiff was not provided medical care to determine the reason for the abnormal findings. Jackson's recently filed lawsuit reads the plaintiff also did not receive any additional or follow-up medical treatment for his injuries. After the video was released, an unknown person bailed Jackson out of jail, and he is now free until his trial. He spent 2 years in a cage getting beaten repeatedly for running into traffic. And this is why people plead guilty even when they're not, because they're held in a cage as long as possible. That way, they end up pleading guilty just to get out of fucking jail. These are your heroes, people. Your heroes. And remember, this treatment is not limited to black male adults. It's across the board. It happens to white people. It happens to children. It happens to old ladies, young ladies. You name it. These people do these things every day to the citizenry of this country, regardless of color, regardless of background. If they want to hurt you, they will. The state is clearly your enemy, and until you recognize that fact, you're blind. Hope everyone has a great day. Kill the state and live free.